My name is Bob Murray. I am the Integrated Pest Management Coordinator for Tick Bytes. Bytes stands for Backyard Tick Eco-Friendly Solutions. We have a 20-year history of helping to better protect families from tick encounters and the subsequent tick-borne illnesses. And today we'd like to share some of the strategies to better protect your family from future tick encounters.
And I'm Barb Murray. I'm president of Tick Bytes. It is a year-old company that we developed to show people how they could do-it-yourself tick and mosquito control on their properties and with their neighbors. For the past 21 years, we have been doing educational, community-based talks. This is a natural extension of that.
So can you guys tell us a little bit about the history of Lyme?
Yeah, Lyme disease gets its name from the fact that back in 1975, a group of young people, predominantly young people in Lyme, Connecticut, that's where it gets the name, were being diagnosed with what they thought were juvenile arthritis. But a series of moms and inquisitive people in the community were saying, hey, wait a minute, it's more of a coincidence that there are 40-some kids and a dozen adults that are coming down with these particular symptoms. And it took a few years for them to actually define the fact that the disease agent, the Borrelia burgdorferi, was responsible for injecting that disease agent into the children, into the adults, and thus Lyme disease originated in Lyme, Connecticut. In 1982, it was formally revealed that Dr. Willie Burgdorferi was the chief scientist and physician who defined that disease agent, and thus the name Borrelia burgdorferi is named after Dr. Burgdorferi.
Is Lyme the only thing we should worry about when it comes to tick bites?
There are between 8 and 12 additional tick-borne diseases that can be transmitted by the same tick bite. So not only Lyme disease, but other co-infections can be transmitted. So it's more complex than having one disease agent.
So I grew up in Maine, and so 30 years ago, growing up in rural Maine, always in the woods, I experienced a lot of, I think, what you would call a dog tick. Mm-hmm. I rarely encountered a deer tick, but now it seems like they're everywhere. Has something changed?
I think a number of factors. The fact that we're seeing more of them as a result of in climate change, it's undeniable that our climate is changing. It might be debatable in terms of why, but the fact that the seasons are longer, there are more abundant deer. The deer are the primary host, the chief blood meal for most of the deer ticks. And the fact that we're spending more time outdoors, the climates are such that we're spending more time outdoors in proximity to deer ticks. And take a look at all of our developments over the past 30 years. We have so many more neighborhood developments within tick habitat. You're totally surrounded by the forest, by the wooded edge. So if there's a healthy deer population, there's a very healthy rodent population, which is the source of the pathogen, and extra time outdoors by seniors, by kids, by all of us spending more time outdoors when the weather is nice, when we want to be out, that's when the ticks are out. And so there's a number of factors. I remember growing up with my brothers in Sanford in the 50s and 60s. We never brought a tick in. And why are there more today? That's debatable. But the science is suggesting that deer ticks are moving further north and further inland. They're into Canada now. They're moving further north and further inland as a large result of the migratory patterns of birds. When the birds are on the ground, they're picking up the immature ticks. When that bird flies away, who knows when that tick is fully engorged and drops off. It could be in your backyard, it could be in your backyard.
So what is the lifespan of a tick?
The 2-year life cycle is fascinating. And it's so important that people have a really good grasp of what that 2-year life cycle. It'll take a minute for me to go through this, but it's important. If an adult female deer tick is successful with that third blood meal, whether it's from a deer or from yourself, that deer tick, the adult female deer tick, will lay the eggs usually in our area in the Northeast. They usually lay the eggs mid to late May. That tick will lay between 2,000 and 3,000 eggs. Okay, so those little tiny eggs are going to hatch in the month of August. Think of that little larval tick. It's a six-legged larval tick. Think of that little larval tick about the size of a period at the end of a sentence. That larval tick is looking for its first blood meal. It's tiny. It's right on the ground. All three phases of ticks, larval, nymph, and adult, do what's called questing. They'll get up on the highest point for the larval and nymph tick because they're so tiny, they're usually down on the leaf litter. But they're waving their front arms, and when a mouse, typically a mouse or a chipmunk, walks by, it attaches. That's the first feeding opportunity for that larval tick. In the process of that tick feeding, that's when it acquires the disease agent. The ticks are not born with the disease agent. It's not passed on transovarial. It's that first blood meal. In most of the mice in our area, 50 to 90% of the mice in our area are infected with Borrelia burgdorferi, which is the Lyme disease agent. So if that larval tick was successful, it completed its first blood meal, it's going to chill out all winter long. It's going to find a place, a nice warm place under the leaf litter, under the snow that we have right now. And in the spring of the following year, year two, it's going to morph into the nymph tick. The nymph tick has 8 legs. The nymph tick is tiny. It's about the size of a poppy seed. That nymph tick is looking for its first blood meal as a nymph. It's going to be the second blood meal, but as a nymph, it's its first. So it's going to have the questing again. That could be a rodent because it's down low. It could be your children or grandchildren down low on all fours playing in your yard or in the perimeter. As a result of that nymph tick attaching, not only is it feeding the blood from the child or from your pet or from yourself, but that feeding action is sip and spit. They're sucking the blood, but they're also regurgitating the contents of their gut into you. So if that larval tick was infected with the disease agent, during that second blood meal, it's passing that disease agent on to you. So it's a crapshoot. When they test ticks in our area for Lyme and other disease agents, it's anywhere from 20 to 50% of the ticks that they test are infected with at least one disease agent. So now that nymph tick was successful at feeding on you or your child or your pet. It drops off. During the summer and into the fall, it morphs now into the adult stage. This is the larger tick, which is easier to see. It's about the size of a sesame seed. This is where the adult tick will oftentimes climb up and quest on brush, on habitat that's maybe a meter or so in height. That's where they prefer the larger mammals. When you hear the deer tick, the vast majority of the ticks, adult female ticks, feed on the back of a deer. In fact, the University of Rhode Island, in all of its research, suggests that every deer, every year, is responsible for 450,000 new ticks. Every deer, every year.
Wow, that's crazy.
So it's scary. So if that adult female deer tick is successful at getting third blood meal, this is in the fall or this time of the year in the spring, it will drop off. It's just going to chill out until mid to late May when it lays its eggs. Then that whole cycle repeats. So it's knowing the life cycle is important in that there are certain times of the year that you're looking for a specific stage of a tick. In the spring, early spring, and in the fall, you're looking for the adult stage. In the summer months when we're spending most of our time outdoors, you will still have a few adults that haven't fed, but the vast majority of the ticks will be the nymph tick. And that nymph tick is so tiny, it's the size of the poppy seed, but that's the tick that's most responsible for transmitting the most cases of Lyme disease because people never remember the tick bite. They're so tiny, they've never found it.
See them.
You want to talk about how tiny they are and show and just hold up the card? We can do B-roll on that afterwards, but
Yeah.
do you want to talk about?
Sure.
Explain how.
Sure. And on online, on the homepage of our website, we feature a tick identification card, which you can download. But we've actually included the scale size of the tick. And the nymph tick, as we mentioned earlier, is about the size of a poppy seed. In fact, Barb, during a lot of our talks that we have, community-based talks, we hand out a little vial. The little vial has both poppy seeds and sesame seeds. And we ask the attendees to place that clear plastic vial of the poppy seed and sesame seed directly over the actual size of the tick. And most of them are just astounded by the fact that, oh my God, they're that small.
Right.
Yeah, they are that small. And it's important to realize that the ticks that we show on our tick identification card, represent the unfed ticks. If a tick has been attached to you or your pets or your kids for multiple days, they have to be this size. And if that's the case, we haven't been doing a tick check.
Right. Right. I mean, those are so tiny. Even if you're doing a tick check, it seems like it's
is.
possible to miss.
And
Yeah, you need to feel.
Yes.
You're feeling for a scab that hasn't been there before. And there are critical areas because when I'll morph into this,
Yeah.
when the ticks go to feed, they are a perfect feeding machine. As Bob said, they will quest. They'll be on the top of a blade of grass. They'll latch on to something as it goes by, and then it will try to crawl to find a quiet space on their host where they can feed undisturbed. So they will tend to go between the toes, behind the knee, bathing suit area, behind the ear, above the ear, in your dark and quiet. And then they secrete a cement so that they will be attached. And then they also secrete an anesthetic so that you do not feel the mouth part going in. As Bob said earlier, suck and spit, which is how the contents of the gut get transmitted. So it's important when you're removing a tick not to do the grab and pull because you're injecting gut contents. We recommend fine pointed tweezers, not eyebrow tweezers, because again, you don't want to aggravate the tick.
Right.
So the goal is to pinch as close to the head as possible.
Sideways to the skin and pull with a steady pressure. When our granddaughter was 5, she had a nymph tick attached right above her right ear. Bob had the flashlight. I held her down, had the fine-pointed tweezers, and I pulled with that steady pressure. It took almost 3 minutes for the nymph to disengage.
Wow.
When you do disengage the tick, and I may not have happened to everyone, but like sometimes the head still gets stuck. What is something that helps with that?
I treat them like splinters. I know that there are some folks who say don't worry about the mouth part being in there, but to me it's a foreign body, so I would treat it as a splinter and try to get it out.
How often do you recommend doing tick checks? As far as, so say your kid is outside playing, obviously, if they've been on the grass or in the woods, that's like a no-brainer. But what about you're just, you live in a wooded area, but you're walking back and forth from your car. You've got groceries, you're just in and out. Is it still a possibility? Is it something you should be doing every single day, no matter what?
I would say every time that I have been out or my family has been out in tick habitat, which is the edge of your property, raking leaves, that's a prime place for ticks to hang out because it's dark and moist. They desiccate, they dry up if they are in sunny, hot areas. So basically, every time you come in from an exposure, just do a quick feel and check. Then at the end of the day, if you've been in and out or here and there and taken the dog for a walk or been out in the wood edges or out in the field with the tall grass, then I would do a very thorough tick check. And remember, the ticks like to hang out in hidden places. So your belly button is another prime location that most people wouldn't think to
Yeah, I
check.
wouldn't even.
No.
I've never thought of that before.
Yeah.
Another question I had is does it always come with a bullseye? Does a lime bite is a bullseye something that happens every single time, or is that some of the time?
No, in fact, in the state of Maine, it's fewer than 50% of the confirmed Lyme disease cases, the person actually had a bullseye rash. And it isn't always a bullseye rash. It could be just an asymmetrical rash, and it could be at a spot not at the site of the bite. And then just following up what Barb was mentioning in terms of the tick checks, the importance of, if you have in your charge your children or your grandchildren and they've been out in the morning, they've come in for their lunch snack or their mid-morning snack, by doing that tick check on them, you can help define where they might have been.
Yes.
You can say, listen, if I wait till nighttime, they've been in so many other places, but if I know that for the first hour and a half they've been in the backyard by that swing set and they were playing ball and hit the ball into the woods, it gives you a much better sense of where your children or grandchildren or your pets have been during that time frame. And the Lyme disease rash should be a definitive marker. If someone has that rash, it should be the definitive marker. But again, the vast majority of people that have been diagnosed, well, in Maine anyway, about 50% of the folks who never ever had the rash and they never ever remember the tick bite.
Yeah.
So it's hard to just say, you've got the rash, you have it. If in fact you do have that rash, consider yourself fortunate, because that is the definitive marker, and most healthcare professionals should begin a regimen of treatment on that alone. The serology of the blood work can reinforce that, but the bullseye rash, the classic bullseye rash, should be the definitive marker for a physician.
Right. Interesting.
So I'm a mom, and this is terrifying. I think these guys have children too. What is the best way to protect our kids, other than the checks, but like more preventative measures to protect our children from attracting ticks and all the things?
I'll start just by sharing some statistics from the University of Maine Tick Lab. In 2024, there were over 5,000 ticks that were submitted by Maine residents to the Tick Lab. 68% of those ticks were acquired in their backyards. Okay? But the more shocking number for me with that report was that in that report, they detailed that only 16% of those homeowners were taking any type of a preventative measure. Okay. So awareness is one thing. We can be aware that there's an issue, but we need to now follow that with action. So in terms of what can you do for your family to better protect? Well, first you start by identifying tick habitat around your home. If we live in the areas that we choose to live in, most of us are surrounded by that wooded edge. So we've defined the fact that we are in proximity to tick habitat. So once we define that we have that challenge, what can I do with my clothing? What can I do with my skin? What can I do in preparing my children when they're visiting outside of my property and they're visiting their friends? There's just a layer of opportunity for the average homeowner to say, okay, I've heard of permethrin, but I don't use it. What does permethrin do? You treat your clothing with permethrin, and it's not only a repellent, it will actually kill attached ticks if they've spent any time at all on the clothing. Barb has some socks, which she'll share a little bit later, and they're for kids, which is awesome because kids are in that environment. And so layer your approach. Repellents to your clothing, repellents to your skin, and oftentimes repellents to the skin. There's debate, do I use DEET, do I not use DEET? But there are so many other formulations today that will provide level of protection. You might need to apply it more frequently if it's not a DEET product. But there are just so many other layered levels of protection that general discussion of this is what I can do on my own property, but what are my neighbors doing or not doing? What are my children doing when they're playing ball across town at the ball field? So it's that awareness followed by action. You've got to be an action plan.
Do schools generally, spray for this kind of thing?
Not typically. We've had a few schools in our past history with our previous pest management company. We've had a few schools that were doing that. But again, so many of the schools were inclined to stay away from pesticides, which is understandable, because understand that you have so many members of the community that might embrace the fact that you're better protecting their kids, but yet there might be the controversy, I don't want my kids anywhere near a pesticide. And that leads into very nicely why Barb and I are doing what we're doing with tick bites, because it's more of an education. And it's more of helping to consult with homeowners to say, these are things that you can do on your own property to better protect your family.
Are the pesticides used to kill ticks harmful?
We consider our initiative to be eco-friendly. And it takes just a minute for me to define that. With our previous pest control company, 100% of the chemistry that we used was synthetic chemistry. Okay. The advantages of synthetic chemistry is the fact that they have a immediate knockdown and they have a much longer residual. In other words, if I were to treat the leaf litter around the perimeter of your property, if a tick were out questing, and only 15 to 20% of the actual ticks in that area are out questing at any given time. So if that were to have been applied a direct contact of that synthetic, it would kill it immediately. But more importantly, the synthetics have a long-lasting residual, 6 to 8 weeks, so that if in the process of the next tick that's underneath the leaf litter and they're coming out to quest, if they make contact with that chemistry, it's going to kill them as well. Okay? So for 6 to 8 weeks, that will continue to work. The problem with synthetics is that if it's lasting that long to kill ticks, it's staying longer in the environment. Yeah. So what we're trying to define is, if we're using the eco-friendly model of perhaps in the fall or in the spring, before or after pollinator activity, we apply a synthetic to just the perimeter of your property, which we know is where the ticks are coming from. Mm-hmm. Then we follow that during the season when you have butterflies and bees, you follow that with a botanical. Botanical is more of a repellent. They're going to want to stay away from those areas. If the tick had a direct contact during a treatment of a botanical, it would likely kill it. But a week later, if a tick came out and interacted with that botanical, it would likely not kill that tick. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate people to say you can still be eco-friendly, eco-conscious, and you can embrace a judicious use of synthetics by using maybe 10% of your chemistry as synthetics, and 90% of the chemistry you put on your property is botanicals. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to have that blend to educate people that you need to properly time, you need to properly apply any treatment that you're going to make. Mm-hmm. And in our document, Time to Treat for Ticks, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. We're trying to teach homeowners that if you're expecting professional results, you need to embrace professional treatment protocol. You need to know when to treat, where to treat, use the right chemistry, and do it in a very methodical way, that you're maintaining records of every time you put chemistry down, just as the professionals do, you're maintaining records of everything you do. So then you can determine whether or not this is effective.
In regards to effective treatment, is there different stages of the tick? You mentioned 3 stages.
Right.
Is there certain treatments that work better at certain stages?
Well, in our experience with our former pest control company, the reason why we like to apply that treatment in Maine, in the Northeast area, as soon as the snow is out, get that treatment into your perimeter. If there are adults in that area that might be questing, if there are ticks that you know are going to reproduce in another month or two, you're able to not only get those targeted ticks that are in that environment. The early spring and the late fall spray, in my opinion, the 2 most important treatments for ticks. There are a number of pest control companies that say, no, wait until May or June when the nymphs are out. Well, again, if the nymphs are out, you've been out well before you're applying that first treatment. So it's properly timed and properly applied. And it's just knowing where to treat. You don't oftentimes have to have a wholesale distribution of pesticides on a property. If a particular homeowner calls, and they're typically moms that would call, I would always walk the property with them and say, can you show me where you spend time on your property? I see you've got a play set. It's over in the woods. Don't have that play set in the woods. Bring it out into the sunny area, as Bob mentioned. Deer ticks desiccate, they dry out. They can't stand that sunny, dry environment. So have that piece of education, but as you're walking the property, you're educating them at the same time and showing them that this is a very safe area for your kids to be playing.
So the stages of the ticks, the pesticides work on each of the stages. It's not, oh, it works better on the nymph versus the larvae versus the adult. It's effective on all of them. And the beauty of Tick Bytes is that we teach the homeowner how to do their own applications. It's not a company coming in and doing it for you. It's you treating your own property and collaborating with your neighbors, because if there's a path through the woods from your house to the neighbor's house and the kids already go through that, you're educating and you're showing them how to take action.
Has there been an increase in tick-borne illness over the last several decades?
Yeah, the numbers that I got from the UMaine Tick Lab, and this is the tracking network here from the state of Maine. They've got a really nice layout of 2024 and 2025 numbers. And there was an increase in Lyme disease over 1 year of 12%. Anaplasmosis, which is another disease agent, an increase in 20%. And babesiosis, an increase in 13%. So look at the trends. When Barb was formally diagnosed with Lyme disease in 2005, she was one of 248 people in the state of Maine that year that were formally diagnosed. Last year, there were 3,700 people formally diagnosed with Lyme disease. But the more alarming statistic should be, and most people don't realize this, that back in 2013, the CDC's estimates say that the reported number of cases is about 10% of the actual number of cases in any given state. So if you've taken that defined 3,700 cases of Lyme disease in the state of Maine in 2024, then we now know that there are likely thousands or tens of thousands of people, some of them kids sitting in our classrooms today with undiagnosed Lyme. And stop and think about the fact that a youngster growing up with this will have that impact their entire life.
And Lyme mimics other diseases, correct? So it's very hard to diagnose. Is that right?
It can be. Lyme can mimic over 200 other diseases, including ALS, MS. Bell's palsy is an indicator that it could be Lyme. And again, the medical community has challenges because there are those additional diseases that present differently. For example, back when I was diagnosed in 2005, I had Lyme disease, I had babesiosis, which is a protozoan, and I had Bartonella, and the treatment protocols are different for each of those. So becoming educated yourself as to what is going on. There are two societies. There are two Lyme societies. There's the Infectious Disease Society, and there's the International Lyme and Associated Disease Society. They have different treatment protocols. And so to be able to have a conversation with your doctor and determine what's going on with you is critical.
How long were you living with symptoms before you were diagnosed?
I had symptoms for probably 4 years.
Wow.
At that time, was it arthritis? Was it menopause? Did I have neurological things going on? It was a challenge. It was a team effort for us to figure out what the treatment protocol would be. And I was fortunate that I was able to connect with our family doctor, was supportive, and our other doctors that we worked with were very knowledgeable, not only about Lyme, but about the additional diseases.
And as an aside to that, when Barbara was creating the website for our former pest control company in February of 2025, she wrote this sentence saying you could have Lyme disease and not know it. That summer, we hosted our first educational session. We've done 120 of them. We hosted our first educational session in which we invited a Lyme literate physician to speak. During that presentation, Bob was saying, hey, you know what? A lot of these symptoms are mine. So we've often wondered, had we not started that pest control company, we may never have realized that the symptoms that we were trying to help get out in terms of helping to protect people were symptoms that we were experiencing. It's just it's come full circle.
So what are some of the strategies that you guys teach homeowners? You mentioned before teaching homeowners how to best figure out where the ticks are and what to do.
First and foremost, it starts assess your property. We've defined that if you're living in tick habitat, If you're picking up chicks, you have a history of picking up chicks on your property, yourself, your kids, your pets, where are the chicks and what kind are they? So that leads into very nicely into this little product right here. It's called the tick drag. It's nothing more than just a white cloth. And the homeowner can take this drag, and you can make it yourself. You can buy a dowel, you get white material, you can use a white beach towel if you had it. And in the process of your dragging this across your property, stop every 20 to 30 feet and check. If there are ticks on your property as you're dragging your property, you're going to find them on this piece of material. And this is called the drag. We also have one that's called the flag, because we know from experience that the vast majority of the ticks are going to be in that interface between your lawn and your wooded edge. And it's hard to drag this through that. So we have a device called the flag, which is the same thing except that it has an extended pole. So you're walking parallel to that perimeter, but yet you're making this go over all of that vegetation. Again, stop every 20 to 30 feet. We have a blog on our website that defines one of the dragging and flagging episodes that we had on our granddaughter's property. Last May, she was sunning herself in her backyard on her beach towel for less than 5 minutes. She called and said, "Grampy, I just found 3 ticks on me." So that following day, I went and flagged and dragged her property, came up with 17 ticks in the backyard, which helped me define, Hannah, you know what? You're right. You do have ticks in your backyard. Now we can put together a strategy to treat. But as important as being able to define that initial infestation, after you treat, do the same thing. Was it effective? For how long was it effective? And so this is all do-it-yourself, available on our website. We have a guide called Time to Drag for Ticks. It shows you step-by-step. You buy a 10-foot piece of PVC piping, some connectors, get yourself some material, and this is all stuff that you can do yourself to better protect yourself. So knowing where the ticks are, again, the vast majority of them are going to be close to that edge. But you will find, particularly in the summer months, dog ticks climbing up your buildings. Yeah. Dog ticks are very hardy. They don't desiccate nearly as easily as the deer ticks do. But define on your property, where are your kids spending their time? Where are you spending your time? Flag and drag those areas. Are there ticks there? If there are, you need to come up with a protocol to treat.
Yeah. So one of the other very doable things is to look at your landscape. If your play sets are in the woods, bring them out into the sun. Keep your lawns cut. Get the bushes out of the way. Designate where is our safer place to play in our yards. When you go out in the woods after that wiffle ball, when you come back in, we need to do a tick check, because that's where the ticks may be. We had, excuse me, we had Pachysandra on the north side of our house. We removed it all because it was a perfect breeding ground for mice. And mice are the primary vectors of the disease agents. So those small rodents there get that habitat away from the house. We have bird feeders. Bob had mentioned that birds are one of the ways that the ticks are transported. So we know that in the spring, when the temperature warms up, we get rid of the bird feeders. We know that the birds will have ample food to eat naturally. The other important thing to understand, even though they're called deer ticks, the deer are the transport system and the breeding grounds. They do not transmit the Lyme disease or other disease agents.
I feel like the deers are getting a bad rap.
They really are. I mean, they're the hangout for ticks, the adult ticks. But that white-footed mouse, that cute little chipmunk, your birds are where those life cycles start. And Bob had mentioned the 2-year life cycle. Well, there are classes every year, so it's not like, oh, here's year one, we don't have to worry about this until next year. Oh no, you've got a backup class
Yeah.
that is actually going through at the same time. And the use of repellents. We recommend that people use EPA rated environmental protection, rated repellents on skin. The permethrin is 0.5% permethrin. You pre-treat the clothes. There are companies that you can send your clothing away or purchase clothing. Beans, some of the sports stores have them. You want to create as many barriers as you can. When our kids go out to play, they are not going to wear long pants with their socks pulled up over their pants. But if they have socks that are treated with the permethrin, the company that we send away to that has these adorable bug socks that only come in children's sizes, these are effective for 70 washings.
Wow.
And as Bob said, when the ticks climb on this, it will kill them. So, shorts, you can treat play clothes. Senior citizens, those of us who garden, that's one of the prime risks because I'm out in the grass or I'm digging through my plants. So again, creating barriers so that there's less likelihood of a tick biting are key.
Is there a scent to the permethrin? Is that
No.
what you call it?
No.
There's no scent. Okay.
No scent. Bob usually, he doesn't have them on today, but usually he wears his insect shield pants and there's, you wouldn't know. When you think of the analogy of paint, would you lick paint on the wall right after you put it on? No. So when they're wet, and if you are treating your own clothes, there are precautions you need to take, well ventilated outside, let it dry. But once it dries, it bonds into the fabric.
And I'm glad Barb mentioned that because in the blog on our website, when I was dragging for Hannah's property, it shows the pictures of wearing permethrin-treated pants. I had permethrin-treated socks over the cuff of my pants. If you're dragging and flagging your property, remember, you are at risk. So it's always, to me, advisable to have two people. Every 20 or 30 feet, you check yourself before you check the flag of the drag. Because if that's collecting the ticks, you could also be collecting the ticks. And one of the most important things that Barb mentioned with the insect shield, the repellent that we've used, it's recommended that you treat your shoes or your boots at the first of every month.
I was just going to ask, do you treat shoes?
Yes, treat your shoes, your boots the first of every month, because understand, remember how tiny the nymph ticks and the larval ticks are? They're starting at ground level. The adults may be up higher questing, but you can be more apt to pick up those larval or nymph ticks down low. So if your shoes are treated and you're wearing permethrin-treated socks, you have a much better chance of getting that application on them before they start climbing up your leg.
Is there, when you go out and do these presentations, is there a common misconception about ticks and Lyme disease that you always get asked and you're like, yes, like I need to fix this?
The aha moment is the very first part of our talk is Barb with that little plastic vial with the poppy seed and the sesame seed. And we have to assure them they're not real ticks because people are freaked out. So those are not real ticks. And when they have their tick identification card and they put that vial directly over, they go, my God, we never realized they were that small. Subconsciously, when you're told to do a tick check, you think of a larger tick. Just because that's what we've seen pictures of ticks crawling, and that's what they typically will show in the media. It's a larger tick crawling. Very rarely do they show the tiny, tiny ticks to actual scale. So the aha moment, huh, Barb? And then usually within a minute or so of our presentations, you see the audience. This happened back in January in York. Within a matter of minutes, you're seeing all the people in the audience doing this. They're doing this. So we know that this is a very effective talk.
I think the other misconception is attachment time. There are some studies that indicate that it is 24 to 36 hours. As one of my doctor friends once said, I've never met a tick that has a watch on. So you can't tell. And Powassan virus, which is one of the other tick-borne diseases, the attachment time is as little as 15 minutes. The research is still catching up, so we don't know the attachment time. So our caution is the longer the tick is attached, the more likely it is to transmit disease agents.
I have a question, and I know this might be medical, so we
Yeah,
can use
we'll
it or
bleep
not.
it if yeah.
Ultimately, if Lyme goes undiagnosed, what's the end? Like, is it something that can kill you, or is it something that just makes your life absolutely miserable?
It could. Your immune system is what takes the
Yeah.
beating, so it could be up to and including. People who have been undiagnosed for a long time take a long time to recover if they can, because your autoimmune system it's taken such a hit. Also, in particular with the Lyme disease bacteria, they can morph into cyst form. They can also go into a biofilm, which is difficult to treat because when you do the antibiotics, it's through the bloodstream, and when they go into the tissue, they hide.
We need to now go from awareness to action. And the analogy I like to use is that when you're driving your car and your check engine light comes on, okay, you're aware that there's an issue. You ignore it. Starts to blink. It's telling, hey, wait a minute, there's an issue here. You need to take action to fix this. So my analogy is, I think we've helped to raise the level of awareness, and what Tick Bytes is trying to do is to have you take that next step. That check engine light, it's a tick light that's blinking right now. We need to go from just the awareness that it's a problem to taking action to make sure we're better protecting our families.
Who is the most likely victim of tick bites and Lyme?
In the state of Maine, the highest incidence among senior citizens. We've got a lot of time on our hands, don't we, Barb? And we're oftentimes walking pets, right? Senior citizens followed closely by children ages 5 through 14. Now think about those kids in the summer months that are outdoors playing, and again, they're not dressed the way that we are today. If they have shorts, maybe a shirt, probably no socks and no shoes, and they're running around the yard and the perimeter. So it's no wonder that the kids are out, the NIM ticks are out, we're not doing enough tick checks, we're not using, the repellents, and when the UMaine Tick Lab represented the numbers that of those people that submitted ticks to their lab, only 16% of them were using some type of a strategy to reduce their risk. That tells you it all, says it all.
One of the other, to me, frightening pieces is that even in the wintertime, when you think that, oh good, we're all set, they're hibernating or whatever it is that they do, anytime the temperature is above freezing, the ticks may become active because they're searching for that blood meal. In January, we were having our school nurse call me down to the office because kids were out on the edge by the fence where the leaves were and jumping in the leaves and coming in with ticks on them. And it was a beautiful snow-covered field, and they were out, they were questing.
So is it true or not true that like the harsher the winter, it's going to kill them off? That makes no difference. If it's a beautiful day, then they're going to be out.
They may be out. The University of Rhode Island Tick Encounter site had a nice graphic a few years ago showing this tick. And you saw the snowpack, and it was out questing. And so they may be out. They're not as big of a concern this time of year, obviously, with all the snow that we've had this year. But when they remain underneath that leaf litter, with the snow cover, they'll be out in force again in the spring when the snow is out.
So they're not dying in the winter at all.
No.
No,
No.
no.
How to remove a tick. Please, please, please do not aggravate the tick. So when you see these suggestions that say, light a match and the tick will back out. Well, if you were a tick, someone applied heat to your backside, would you go toward that heat? No. If you aggravate the tick, it will regurgitate the gut contents. So you've just done a push of whatever was in their gut. Do not try to smother it with baby oil or cotton balls. Because they're disgusting and gross, if you have an attached tick on you, your first impulse is to grab it and pull. Well, again, you're grabbing it, you're pulling, and you're also injecting. So that's why the fine pointed tweezers pull steady pressure. The mouth part has barbs on it, so it takes a bit of pressure to pull that out. Yeah. And as Bob had said, the engorged ticks can be raisinette sized, and they're completely gross and disgusting. Tickencounter.org is the University of Rhode Island's tick lab. They have the very best website for identifying stages of engorgement. So if you do find a tick on yourself or your pets, you can actually go to their site. They have a feature where you can submit photos and they'll tell you information about those ticks.
It's called Tick Spotters.
Yeah.
And it's a useful tool for an individual homeowner. You've just removed a tick and you're not sure what kind of a tick is it. Most people have smartphones, so you take a clear, sharp image of that tick. You upload it to Tick Spotters at the University of Rhode Island. Normally within 24 hours, they'll get back to you. They'll tell you what the type of the species of tick. They'll also give you a preliminary assessment in terms of how long that tick might have been attached to you. So that will help to define a risk assessment. Tickencounter.org, the gold standard for education. Yes.
And then the University of Maine Tick Lab encourages Mainers to send in their ticks in a container. When you go to their website, it gives you specific instructions. If you need to corral a tick that you've just removed and you don't have any other materials, you can take Scotch tape and just enclose the tick in that so that, but a vial is
Or a baggie.
best practice,
Yeah,
or a
little
baggie.
baggie, Ziploc bag.
Be aware when you're trying to put them in the baggie, they are not interested in
Won't climb
going. And if you don't have the baggie zipped tightly, you have tick escapes. So, yeah, Bob brought the baggie home from Hannah's, and I'm like, are you sure that is zip-locked? Yeah.
So, do you have any other information? Where can we go to learn more? Where can I send family to go check out all of this stuff? I know this video will be available, but do you have a website? Do you have any booklets or anything like that that helps people spread awareness?
On our website, which is tickbytes.us, we have a free download. We actually have 2 free downloads. You can build your own tick drag and tick flag. That is a wonderful download. Bob's version of it is much more technical than mine. I was give me a towel, give me a
dowel.
No, not even a dowel. A stick will work, and lasso the ends with a rope. We also have a booklet that actually has 2 of our grandchildren picking raspberries on the cover. That just gives you general information along with resources, where else you can go. One of the things that I have always strived was any information that we give out, we have the sources for it. As you all know, when you go on the internet, sometimes there's some really unusual perspectives. So our goal is to vet all the information that we present and source it. So the links are right there in that booklet as well. And then, of course, we have the Time to Treat, which is the manual where a homeowner would be able to be comfortable going in and learning how best to treat their property. And people can contact us. Bob has a really good pesticide application background, and mine is more on the disease and the education on reducing your risk of tick encounters. I think one of the other factors is that we have always taken the educational approach, and that's unusual.
Yeah. But it feels so altruistic is how it kind of feels. You're not
Well, and
you're
we're
not selling pesticides,
Right.
you're informing people, you're warning people, and it's I as a parent really appreciate that, and hope that I take the action that you're talking about and pay attention to the light, because it does seem very scary to me that they're so small and can go so easily undetected. And they're so prevalent, especially here in Maine. So I appreciate it a lot.
And people's information base is so varied. It's not really out there. I know that some of the local news channels do series and put out PSAs. It still is news to many people. And for me, that's sad, because 21 years from my diagnosis, and there hasn't, the research is still evolving. The treatment protocols are all over the place.
Right. And there could be anywhere from around 40,000 people a year
Just in our state.
contracting Lyme's or tick-borne illnesses.
Every year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's substantial.
Now, you guys primarily have mentioned Maine statistics, but you also mentioned that it's starting to move into Canada, the tick population. Is there, like, are you seeing the increase? Like, does the South have more of these Lyme cases, or is there a certain population?
The South has far fewer. In fact, if you visit CDC's website, you'll see maps that show Northeast and Upper Midwest as really the epicenters for Lyme. And there are a number of factors. One of the factors that my understanding is that the white-footed mouse we said is the most competent host reservoir for those disease agents. Well, down south, apparently the ticks don't feed on the mice, they feed on lizards. And the lizards are not a competent host for those disease agents. So when you look at the CDC maps of Lyme disease in particular, I mean, there are maps for anaplasmosis and babesiosis as well. But when you look at the South, you say, my God, there's nothing down there. There is. There are incidents, but not nearly to the extent that we have them here in the Northeast. Yeah.
And the reporting and the diagnosis is varied as well. So the knowledge, if the knowledge base is less, you're going to have fewer reported cases.
I mean, I've known about ticks for forever. I know they're terrible. I know it's bad. I know Lyme disease is awful and I don't want it. But to be honest, I've never taken a precaution to, I've never sprayed my lawn. Because in my mind, it's like, oh, it's annoying. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one extra thing I have to do on my list as a mom. And it's like, but it seems like it is very accessible. and the amount of time you're spending in these preventative measures is small compared to the amount of time you would spend in a hospital treating the disease. Like,
Well,
what is
yeah, that's one of the things as we look to define what Tick Bites was going to do. Understand that historically, a property owner like yourself was responsible for treating their own property.
Yeah.
As a pest management professional who put down thousands of treatments, it's typical that it's a shotgun approach. I do this house in this neighborhood. I drive 10 miles, do that house in that neighborhood. But what this Tick Bites initiative is trying to do is collaborate with your neighbors. If ticks are an issue on your property, I'll bet your neighbors and your whole development have issues with that. So look, if we can define that there's a treatment protocol that we know works because we've used it, the science behind what we're selling, and the treatment protocol is fairly straightforward, that you can buy a battery-operated backpack. We'll teach you how to apply the chemistry, show you why it's necessary to maintain the records. You buy one backpack, 5 or 6 neighbors can share that backpack. You don't always have, you don't have to buy your own. So one investment, buy one guide and share the information in the guide. And now you're collectively protecting each other. You protecting your neighbors, they're protecting their neighbors, you're better protected. You're all better protected. So this model is such that it's not that shotgun approach, because it's clear that what we've been doing isn't working as individual homeowners. What the pest management professionals have been doing isn't working if these numbers continue to escalate. So let's combine both. You know, if you need to, and in our guide, in the preface of our guide, we say DIY is not 100% of the solution. You may need to rely on a pest management professional for some of your pest control needs. And we make that clear right in the preface of our guide to say you may need to have help from a pest management professional. So encouraging homeowners to take that action that we haven't been taking.